focusing on just how do you identify a problem? How do you know I have a problem worth solving? How do you articulate the problem, your problem statement? And then how do you go out and actually test your understanding of the problem with the real human beings that have the headache? For me, if you ask me, out of all of the boot camps and out of all of the stages of innovation that you're going to go through, this is definitely the most important. The reason I say that, and you're going to see this at the end of our week together, they say that if you understand the problem you're solving, you're 50% done solving it. But you're going to learn that as an innovator, if you understand the problem you're solving, you're actually 80% done. The remaining 20% is just English and go and look for a guy who can actually implement the solution and pay him, and then you get it done, right? But 80% is understanding the problem. And the more you get obsessed with understanding problems, the more you're going to see that people around you, normal human beings, don't actually spend a lot of time with problems, with understanding problems. And that becomes part of your superpower. The way we like to put it, if you and I have a task to cut down a tree in 5 days, here's how you would do it. You would immediately get the sharpest knife from the toolkit and you start chopping at the tree really fast every single day. Here's how I would do it. I would spend day 1 measuring the circumference of the tree, and then I'll go home by 5 and go and play with my wife and my kid. I'll spend day 2 checking the thickness of the bark of the tree, and then I will go home while you're still chopping overnight. I will spend day 3 going to the market to find what are all the different options for axes that exist. I will spend day 4 merging my calculations from the wood, from the tree, as well as the sizes to size the right kind of axe. And then I will spend half of day 5 using the right axe to chop at the right angle on the tree, and I will get it done maybe faster than you would, who started 4 days ago. What we say as innovators is that if you have 5 days to cut a tree, spend 4 days understanding the problem and 1 day hitting at the right spot. So that's the synthesis of what we're going to do, or where we want to get you to by the end of this bootcamp, if you engage. All right. In the way of a topic, Jonah has said, today we'll just call it Mastering the Science of Innovation Delivery in Today's World. Okay. I'm going to go through a series of slides, and then we will have a conversation towards the end, right? Q&A, because I really want to hear from you guys. Right. Next slide. Why is this important? Jonah, I think that you skipped. You don't want me to introduce myself. Okay, that's okay. Jonah is like, there's no point introducing yourself. Okay, in the way of an introduction, I know some of you on this call, some of you know me, most of you don't. I like to term this section as 50 Shades of Blue. Get it? Blue as in ology. Blue. Okay, right. 50 Shades of Blue. But I would take an approach to the introduction that sort of should help you give you context of where I'm coming from and why I leave for the material that we're going to cover over the next few days. My journey into the world of methodic scientific problem solving is one that has spanned the last decade and a half and across 4 continents. I started my career in the random plantations in Southeast Asia, just figuring out what is the meaning of life. And I've had the privilege of trying to learn some of the stuff we're doing in North America. And then at some point, I went to the streets of Nigeria, quite literally all 6 geopolitical zones, including Sambisa Forest, where Boko Haram currently does their thing, and I had to lead innovation there for groups of people. And these days, I spend a lot of time in East Africa. Now, what I have learned throughout my journey that is relevant to you, I've learned two important principles of problems. Number one, there is no unique problem. Doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a unique problem. I have learned that what you think is a unique problem really isn't. You just either A, you've not traveled wide enough to meet with people at the farthest ends of the earth that face the problem that you're facing. Or B, you just haven't lived long enough to know the last time human beings faced that same problem, maybe 100 to 200 years ago. So if you check laterally, geographically speaking, you will likely see a similar situation being faced by people halfway across the world. Or if you check in the annals of history, you would likely see where human beings faced it before. The good book says there is no problem that is new or uncommon to man. You're just not old enough to know when it happened the last time, even your pandemic. So there's no unique problem. And that is both scary but comforting at the same time. It's scary because you're like, why do human beings always find themselves in the same deep-ish? It's comforting because it's like, no matter what I'm going through, there's actually people who have actually faced this before. I just need to find out who they are. The second thing that I have learned through my journey is that there are only unique approaches to solutions. So these problems have existed and they keep coming back over and over to different groups of people. But what we're seeing is people in South America facing similar challenges as my brethren in Uganda, but approaching it in a very interesting and novel way. So what we're seeing is unique approaches to solutions for old problems. And that sets the tone of the rest of our conversation. So the part of my journey that really has, I would say, left an imprint into this whole conversation here is, number one, yes, it's all about diversity. It's the diverse experience across multiple cultures. It's the fact that by extension, the way my life is designed, I cannot look at problems. I really cannot look at problems from one lens, simply because I'm Nigerian, married to a Ugandan, with a baby that was born in Kenya. We live in Southeast Asia, but currently in East Africa. So I'm sure you get the point. Like, even if I wanted to talk about Nigeria's problems alone, my very wife will look at me and say, yeah, hold my beer. Same thing in Uganda. Or I go outside and my friends in Kenya will be like, yeah. All my business partners in Ethiopia will be like, oh, you guys even have it better than us, right? So by definition, every problem I want to vent about, I always end up getting different cultures, adding their perspectives to it. And that's why this thing I just said, there are no unique problems, is my everyday life, 24 hours. And so the reason I'm emphasizing this is because on this call, we have people from at least 4 different African countries. And you're going to go on a journey together. And I think that one of the things you will find out the most is how true this statement is and how very similar you guys really are. I would love to hear more about that later on. So that's me, 50 Shades of Blue. I know, very, very boring. For the more juicy and exciting information, please reach out to me offline. We'll have a conversation. Jonah is looking at me from the side because we do not have the time. So moving on to the next slide. So why is all of this important? All of this talk of problem. Is Oluchi just trying to scare us? Or maybe he's trying to motivate us, or as my Nigerians would say, ginger us to stick with the program. Yes, it's all of that plus more. Next slide. It's really, and Jonah, I don't know if you're recording this session. Huh? Are you? You are, yeah? Okay, cool. It's really because, in case you've been living under a rock or you have been in a cryogenic chamber where you've been frozen for the last how many years, you probably have noticed that the world is currently at a tipping point. There's a plethora of things that's affecting us right now at the same time. And if I muted my mic, if we had a bit more time, I know I would, get a lot of suggestions from you. There's the ever-present climate change, bada bing, bada boom. There's we're Africans, so we never really have enough resources, even though we have abundance of resources. It's just the paradox of being an African, right? You're rich yet you're broke. I don't understand it, but it is what it is, right? There's all kinds of things that has made just existing in today's world infinitely more challenging than the time of our parents or our grandparents. Fact. My dad apologizes to me every other day that, man, I don't know how you guys are going to do it. But in my time, not that it was super easy. However, we inherited a country that was working, right? But you guys are swimming against the tide, right? So everyone agrees that we are at a very, very critical point. And if you've been following the last few weeks with what's happening, first of all in the United States, and secondly in the developed world, it's like everybody just drank the same portion of madness, and it's just all mad. Right? From January, we're going to have an interesting president in the US. Europe is all over the place. And whether we like it or not, as Africans, we can't put our head in the sand because all of this affects us. So there is a lot of uncertainty and anxiety in the air as to what's going on. But I submit to you that what you're seeing right now is not the problem. It's the symptom of something much deeper that's brought to the surface. And as innovators, we need to understand not only what are we seeing in the headlines, but we need to understand the underlying trends or the underlying factors so that we can design effectively in everything that we do. What do I mean? What does all of this English mean? Next slide. What this basically means is that we need to be able to break things down into subtle sub-parts to be able to solve them. Elon Musk was once asked on a TED Talk, if you guys have watched it. If you haven't, please go look for, well, he's done a couple of TED Talks, but the one with the founder of TED himself, Anderson, where they sat down together. And Anderson said, dude, you've built multiple multi-billion-dollar companies that are literally solving the hardest problems in the world, right? At the same time, you've done more in the last decade than many people do in multiple lifetimes with the entrepreneurial journey. How do you do it? And how do you keep focus? And Elon Musk said, very simple. I might credit this to my first degree in physics, but not so much the technical side, but the side of physics that taught me that if you can break anything down to its sub parts, then you can solve it. Yeah, if you can break this big thing to the different parts that make up the big thing, then you will solve any problem. And so from my previous slide, it was the world. But I submit to you, again, as Africans, 3 very interesting factors. I will not say that these are the only 3. I will say, however, from my experience, that these 3 underlying factors that you see on your screen are probably responsible for 80 to 90% of the headache that you're living in right now in your current reality. They're the elephants in the room, and we must understand them. The first piece that is likely responsible for maybe 60 out of that 80% has been around for a while, and it's called globalization. Globalization is that elephant in the room that nobody ever talks about. However, it's turned our lives upside down in both the positive and the negative direction. For those of you who have access to Google, ChatGPT, whatever you want, you can Google the word globalization. Globalization is just basically, it basically refers to the collapse of global borders. And it's the reason why, or rather it's the phenomenon where boundaries or physical boundaries over the last 100 years seem to have disappeared across countries. So case in point, many years ago, when my dad was young, if he wanted to know what was going on with his cousin in the US, he couldn't. He would have to write a letter, send it to the post office, which was probably how many hours away. And then the postman would have to put it on a ship, and it would take anywhere between 4 to 6 months to get to the US before it's. And then his cousin would write back, same journey. Before you know it, to say hello and get a hello back was 12 months. 12 months between hellos was the reality that our parents grew up in when they were young, when they were much younger, and our grandparents. And to think that that was just what, 1, 2 generations ago. And we've come to the place where we're now fighting over the fact that, Oluchi, there was a blue tick on your phone and you never replied me for 2 hours. I hate you. Like, we've come all that way in just 2 generations. Like I said, it's turned our lives upside down, both in the positive and in the negative. So globalization, collapse of borders that has resulted into the free flow of information, people, resources, you name it, infrastructure, basically the factors of production. And so now we can know exactly, like I saw the news this morning, some big shot CEO of a tech firm in New York, right there on the streets of New York, was gunned down yesterday. And they found out he was under DOJ investigation because he was going to release some damning information on some senators. And I saw the CCTV video of the gunman just show up, shoot him, walk away casually, and ride an e-hailing bike into the park and disappeared. It happened yesterday. I saw it this morning, right? This has really, really, really shifted the dimension of what it means to solve problems, and it's made problems infinitely harder to solve. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So globalization is a trend that keeps on affecting us and getting worse. Worse, depending on which side of the spectrum you're sitting. It is a wave that gets higher and higher and higher. And just like every wave, you can either ride it or it will drag you. But it is here and it is moving. The aim of this bootcamp is to teach you how to surf the wave and not how to drown underneath it. But it is here nonetheless. With the advent of regenerative AI that has now been democratized just towards the end of 2022. It's just been 2 years, guys. And AI this, AI that, AI this. You're interested in a guy, he can't even write a love poem to you anymore. He has to ask ChatGPT to write it. Like, that's where we are in 2 years, right? Again, globalization. Okay. The second piece, because we are African, that makes solving problems in this part of our world more difficult than ever before, is financial exclusion. That's just basically big English to say, and I know I'm on record here, so I have to be politically correct, but that's big English to say, I'm sorry to say it, but relatively, Africans are poor. And what that means is that as you try to innovate, for those of you who will be on the entrepreneurial track, or for those of you who want to be corporate innovators and solve problems within companies, same problem, same issue. As you're trying to innovate, you're constantly thinking of, how am I going to solve this guy's headache knowing very well that he cannot pay me. it is it is the craziest thing ever. How do I solve his headache in a world-class way? Yeah, Oluchi says we should be world-class. Yeah, that's great, but world-class is expensive. And this homie ain't got no money. Yeah, this is the paradox of innovating in our part of the world. And the more we ignore it and deceive ourselves, the more we're setting up and launching people who are going to fail. And the more Africa is not changing. That is why this is not one of those boot camps where we teach aspire to perspire. You can do it. And then we launch you there, and in a couple of years you failed. Nah. We're realists. We're like, dude, you're going into a marketplace that has so many problems, so many opportunities, and everyone's gonna tell you about the opportunities, but they're not gonna tell you about the part of, yeah, go solve the opportunities. But most of the people you're solving for cannot pay you directly. So what do you do? The third piece, which is a lot more recent, is just the issue of the minor issue of the pandemic. It was basic, it was minor. Remember that stuff? That one, yep. If you're all here, please pat yourself on the back because you survived 4 years ago. Many did not, and yet we are here. That's pandemic. Many things have been said about it. You've read many things. Heck, we all lived through it. So we all can write books at this point. I pity our children and our grandchildren. So you know how your parents were like, in the year of the Civil War, for us it's gonna be, it was the year 2020, the year of the pandemic. Have I told you the story of the pandemic, my granddad? Yes, Oluchi, 5,000 times. Sit down, hear it again. So that's it for us. And the pandemic means many things to many people, to everybody. But what it does mean, thank you, Daniel. I love your vibe. Everybody else is feeling so serious. I guess because it's after work hours, and for those in East Africa, they're half asleep, and then Oluchi is boring them. It's okay. Today is the only session that you're going to get me talk like this. For the next couple of sessions, you're going to wish I was talking because of the amount of work you're going to have to do in your groups. You will beg for us to talk. So enjoy today, and I hope you take some notes. So about the pandemic, it was crazy. It was what it was. But one thing that I submit to you, the pandemic was, relative to what we're doing here on this call, was the pandemic was a major, what's the word now? Reset in the global economy. And what that means, and pay very close attention to what I'm about to say. What that means is that many old opportunities were killed and many new opportunities were created. Again, just like globalization, a wave. It's up to you whether you want to ride this or not. In the middle of the pandemic, I happened to be halfway through my master's in innovation and entrepreneurship. And I remember us, so we're the COVID batch, and I remember us having a lot of conversations with our professors about, what are the opportunities here? And I remember one class where we had to look at global events, like pandemic size events for the last 500 years. And one thing we found out was that every time there was a major global catastrophe like the pandemic, some people, everybody lost a lot of money, but some people got stupidly rich every single time. And that was rather interesting. Every single time. The money never left the planet. If you feel like you got broke out after the pandemic, sorry to tell you, I think it's in Juliana's pocket. So everyone, please make friends with Juliana or your team. She took all your money during the pandemic, right? And if you think this way, then there's hope. The money it just left your pocket and your bank account. It went somewhere else. So at the end of this boot camp, please go and look for who's keeping your money and let's get it back, right? How does that sound? But more importantly, please understand what the trends are. What opportunities opened up? And how can I ride those waves? Which ones closed? I could teach an entire course on this, but I'm just going to leave it hanging there. So you see these three, what I like to call the triple threat: globalization, COVID-19, and then the fact that we're battling all of that and solving problems in Africa for Africans that predominantly, aka the poorest continent in the world. Yeah, that makes things, next slide, that demands that business as usual is not an option. So I have an idea, it's going to be great. So many people want it. No, don't jump into it. Follow the process we're going to teach you first. Yeah. And what does this mean? Three terms I want to define properly. The first is globalization. I've already said that, right? The integration of national economies through trade, investment, capital, labor. Basically, there are no borders, right? People are moving across borders without even realizing it. Money is going really fast, right? Across borders, information is going really fast, right? Technology is going really fast. Everything is going really fast. The second piece is a little thing I like to call organized complexity. Organized complexity is really the gist of what we're talking about here. More of that to come. And organized complexity just says the degree of both organization and complexity of a system. So basically, how complex are problems today? And if you've been listening to me for the rant for the last few minutes, I think you kind of get the vibe that things are more complex today than the time of our parents. Fun fact, organized complexity is a thing. And like I said before, we have to always take a thing and break it down into its subparts before we can fully understand it. So more of that to come in a bit. The third piece is frugal innovation. I'm going to talk a bit more about this in a bit, but later on. But all I need you to know is the fact that when we say innovation, just so that we all have the same definition. I know you all have gone through discipline entrepreneurship. You all have told your family and friends, oh my gosh, I'm doing this cool bootcamp thingy. It's called like the Innovation Entrepreneurship Bootcamp, like yada, 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 yada. And guys, let's just have the same definition of innovation here. I'm not even going to stress myself. The last time I asked a cohort what's the definition of innovation on a call with almost how many people, I got different answers, right? And we cannot go on this journey together if we don't have the same understanding. So there are two things from the perspective of innovation. Number one is innovation means the ability to deliver value. That is the definition we subscribe to here, and that's what we're going to use. The ability to deliver value. Okay? Therefore, frugal innovation means the ability to deliver more value with less resources. It's that simple. If I give you value, I have done innovation. I am an innovator, period. If I give you value with less, so if I do more of that, if I do that value with less time, less cost, less resources, then I am a frugal innovator. Wanted to call that out because when you finish this program, you're not only going to be innovators. The curriculum here is not designed for you to just be people of value. It's designed for you to be people of value anywhere you find yourself for less. Meaning, if you're putting a company and value to them is sales, but their sales budget is in several millions of dollars, you will achieve higher sales with a fraction of that cost. Oluchi, is that possible? Absolutely. Stay tuned. Next slide, please. So let's deep dive into organized complexity. What does it really mean? As I have said before, the world is at a tipping point. The three foundational layers that I talked about, globalization, COVID, financial exclusion because we're Africans, makes things very complex. And what that means is that we now need to really understand this term, organized complexity. Things are neither chaotic nor simple. Things are neither chaotic nor simple. I'll say that one more time. Things are neither chaotic nor simple. I do not know how many of you have actually done a course on chaos theory. You will understand what I mean by things are neither chaotic. What you're dealing with in your life, whether it's at work, your personal life, it's not chaos. I know chaos. I know people who use mathematical models to design chaos. What you're dealing with is not chaos. It's actually organized. There's a pattern. At the same time, I admit it's not simple, but they exhibit the character traits of organized complexity. What that means is that it is complex, but it is organized. And so if you can understand the pattern of this complex thing, you will solve any complex problem. Very simple. So what are the trends? What are the symptoms or the signs to show you that you're dealing with organized complexity? I can guarantee you, when I read out this 6, you'll be like, that's why my relationship didn't work. It was organized complexity. Oh, that's why me and that employer didn't work. For example, one of the symptoms that you're dealing with organized complexity is always messy. And I don't mean the footballer. I mean messy, like get my hands dirty, kind of messy. It is messy. So please leave this bootcamp if you only want to solve problems that don't make you break a sweat or break your nails that you just did at the spa over the weekend, because you will get your hands dirty over the next few weeks. You will get stressed. Jonah has designed the curriculum to make sure that you are frustrated. I'm sorry in advance. It's not too late to drop off. It is messy. Organized complexity number 2. When you're dealing with organized complexity, everything is connected. Everything is connected. Everything is connected. I teach a course called Systems Thinking. And systems thinking is a subset of design thinking. And systems thinking just basically helps anyone understand how to connect cause and effect. It tells you that you want to solve, give clean drinking water to villagers in Eastern Ethiopia. Sounds great, but there's something called unintended consequences. By giving the clean water there, you are robbing somebody else of the ability to make money from the fact that there was no clean water. So your project is connected to somebody else's bread, which is connected to a government official that was like, it's all connected. And so in order to solve one thing, if you don't have advanced skills in systems thinking, you will never truly solve your organized, complex problem. The third thing is that there will always be uncertainty. One of the questions my wife asked me 2 years ago, one time, I think, we were in Addis, and she asked me in the car, she said, if you could give advice to your younger self when you were jumping and say, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, what would you tell yourself? I said, very simple. Be comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty. Basically, give uncertainty a face. Every day you wake up, you're like, hi, uncertainty, have you had breakfast? Please come and sit down. Let us dine together. Because uncertainty is the name of the game. And that leads to number 4, ambiguity. They're not necessarily the same. Uncertainty is, I'm just moving. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I hope it works. Which is why the best innovators in the world, if you read Steve Jobs' biography, if you read the biography of Bill Gates, you will find in the first few pages where they say, I'm just a lucky guy. Because at some point, they all don't know what the heck they do, if it will work. It's uncertain. Ambiguity means I can't really see all of it. I can only see, it's like driving in a fog, right? You can only see how many meters ahead of you. That's all. Everything else is ambiguous. Number 5, there will always be conflicting organized systems. This one is very intriguing for me, especially as Africans. I don't need to say a lot more here. I already gave an example of a random clean water project in Ethiopia. But I'm sure each one of us can give an example of this where you think you're doing good for a group of people. And yet the group of people who need this solution are the same group of people who are going to screw you over. Or their cousins and their aunties will screw you over. And then you realize that, oh my goodness, that pain was there by design. There's a reason it hasn't been fixed in 50 years. It's not because people don't know what to do to fix it. It's because a certain group of people, always the minority, the 1%, are benefiting for it to be that way. Conflicting organized systems. Emphasis on systems. It's never one individual. Have you noticed that? Never one individual who's fine. It's a system. The system. And that system doesn't have a face. Right? So the ability to understand that I see a pain, but I gotta understand the conflicting organized systems around this thing. Otherwise, we are dead on arrival. This, as you can see, these things here, trust me, I've vetted a lot of entrepreneurial curriculums, been through a couple myself. There's not a lot of emphasis on this, especially for Africans, and it's my honest opinion that we're not going to do you justice if we launch you into the world and say, hey, you now have the skills. Africa has potential. Go on. The organized systems will give you knockout punches left, right, and center, and you're going to be in Jonah's DM and saying, Jonah, you lied. You lied. You said if we sign up for your bootcamp, we will be great. I don't feel so great right now, right? Number 6 is that there will always be market and system constraints. This one breaks my heart every time because what that means, like I said earlier, the reality in Africa is that so much potential, so much pain, so much opportunities, and yet the poorest continent. What that means, it's not just poor in terms of financial, also in infrastructure. What that means is that there's very few things that you want to work on and you will work on in this bootcamp that you're not going to see market and system constraints. I can't preach this enough. I once had to lead, was one of the team leads on what was then the largest microcredit program on the continent of Africa, where we gave $500 million to 5.2 million market women and petty traders. And it was my job, literally. Bosses were like, yo, Oluchi, there's 300 million out there, Mr. Innovator, go get it back. Go get it back and don't use the stick, use the carrot, right? So it was my job to literally reason like a market woman and find out what are your motivations in life. Please, 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 can you pay me? But please, 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 because I can't use the stick. Why I'm saying this is there was something we found out in the northeast of Nigeria. Initially, we were not getting our repayments from there. And so when we went down there to interview, that's Boko Haram territory for those of you who are not Nigerians. Let me give you the end of that story. 6 months later, I remember presenting this to the World Bank and to Gates Foundation. Our highest repayments at a particular time came from that region. People who are in war fighting for their lives had time to go look for how to repay a loan that they took. What changed? We took the time to understand what are the market and system constraints, and boy, were they many. Many. So for example, we found out that in a number of villages there were no telephone masts. So they were not even getting my messages of you're owing money for 2 years. Ironic, right? No masts. You will think, you will think that the whole country should, no masts. So we saw a number of things, market and system constraints. You cannot innovate in Africa and pretend like you're innovating in Europe, where, typically the markets are homogeneous and everything just works and all of that stuff. Nah, you're going to find yourself leaving your product or service and going to lobby regulators, friends, like people that can bring in other infrastructure so that your thing would work. Fun fact, and you can book my time later for this. This is the reason why e-commerce has not worked in Africa. I am of the opinion that e-commerce did not come to Africa because Africa was ready for it. It came because it was the biggest thing in the West. Look at the data. There is no one e-commerce company on the continent of Africa that is profitable. The largest is Jumia. Until today, Jumia is not profitable. There's a reason for that. The school of thought says that if Amazon moves, if Amazon, not Amazon Web Services, but Amazon, the grocery, Amazon, comes to Africa, they will make losses for the next 10 years. Not because they're not great, but because if you look at how Jeff Bezos scaled Amazon, it wasn't just about selling things online. It took the whole delivery mechanism. He was delivering things to US and Canada using the US postal system. My Nigerians in the house, how's your NIPOST doing? My Ugandan Post, how efficient, right? The US postal system was literally the main distribution channel when Amazon started. But look at our part of the world. You say you want to start an e-commerce business. All you want to do is sell phones or sell shoes online. But how do you get it to people around you? All of a sudden, you wanted to sell things online. You're just a bloody merchant. But now you have to look for money and buy a fleet of bikes. You now become a logistics provider that you know nothing about. Right? And then there's also the slight problem of, Uganda is my second home. So I know this is not just a Nigerian thing where I want to come to your house. There are no street signs. Oh, it is after the church, right beside the red container and down the hill. And when you hear, boom, you stop, right? That's my house. That's how we direct people to our houses. So that's the third problem, addressing. As long as we don't fix addressing. I looked at Jumia's financials when they went public in 2019, I think. And do you know that the average number of trips to deliver to a house was 1.5 trips? So what that means is that almost they try to deliver to you twice. Who's paying for those trips when they fail to deliver? Which brings me to the fourth point why e-commerce is not going to work in Africa, at least for the next 5 to 10 years. And we're getting there. We're not where we used to be, but we're not there yet. The fourth thing is cash on delivery. Africans are still paranoid. My mother is not going to put her card online. Heck, even me that I know how to use the internet, I don't trust those guys. I need to see the thing and hold it in my hand before I pay. But remember my previous point. You didn't pay anything for the number of trips, and then I come and then Fubara is like, this is not what I ordered. Please take it back. Dead. How do you remain profitable with that? Compared to the West, where by the time you're booking, you're cashing out, like you're checking out with payment. You see these fundamental things I just mentioned. These are not problems with the business. These are problems with market and system constraints. And many people are trying to solve this from an e-commerce place, and kudos to all of them. We don't have the time to look at those. But my point is, do not just jump into, oh, I have this great idea, it will be fantastic, without thinking about the market and system constraints and how you will navigate it to get to your intended people that have the pain. So whenever you see the 6 things hanging around, you know that you're dealing with organized complexity. And I hope I've been able to communicate to you with this slide that your life is organized complexity pro max because you are African. Sorry, right? Because you're African, anything you're going to do is organized complexity. And that's why we take the time to curate the kind of curriculum that we have. Next slide, please. So where does this all get to? Whether you work for a company or you start a business, again, whether you're a corporate innovator or you are a street innovator or what some people will call an entrepreneur, you will face organized complexity. It's not only for entrepreneurs. Again, this bootcamp is innovation, right? The skills you're learning here, apply it in someone's business, you are a corporate innovator. Apply it in your own legal entity, you are an entrepreneur. It's the same thing, the same process. Wherever you choose to do it after this bootcamp, you will face organized complexity. I submit to you that many of you who are working and have been frustrated and or are not progressing in your career, you're dealing with organized complexity. You just don't know how to navigate it. Master how to navigate it and watch your career blow up. Next slide.
It's 22 hours.
Just a few stats that we found rather interesting, right? I want to assume that most of you already know the one that's at the top right. Some data says 87%, I guess if you round it up, 90% of startups fail. Well, officially by CB Insights globally, it's around 87%. And they don't just fail, they fail within their first 7 years. Now, this was a personal obsession of mine. When I was doing my master's, I remember asking my professor, hey, what is that number for Africa? He laughed and said, that's a good point, Oluchi. No one's actually really tracking it, but I hypothesize that it's roughly around 92%. Pause, guys. What that means is that out of 10 of us that start a company today, only one of us is going to survive past 7 years. Jonah, how many people did you say on this call? 28. Please do the math. It's not me, it's the data. Out of 10 of us who start a venture right now, only one of us, according to the data, is going to survive past 7 years. That is very, very strange. Our vision with this bootcamp is to make sure that at least you guys are good, right? We're like 80% of our cohort are killing it 10 years from now. Yay! That's the prayer. But we've studied the 10%. I've spent the last decade and a half trying to understand what the 10% do that the 90% do not do. The entire curriculum here is designed after the 10%. That is why you're going to hear some stuff that you're not going to agree with, and I really do not care. Because until you can come at me with research that says, this assertion here and here and here, you're wrong. I'm happy to learn, but I'm only going to listen to your research because I have research of 15 years to say you want to be part of the 10%, do this. It's not perfect what we're teaching, but at least we have an idea that this is that kind of things that they do. There's data here, Jonah, that I talk about all the time. There's a deep dive in this 90% that breaks my heart. And that is the fact that Africa is one of the most family-centric continents in the world. Agreed, right? Around 85% of all businesses on the continent of Africa are family-owned businesses. You can Google this. And yet, only 2% of family-owned businesses go to the next generation. That breaks my heart. For many reasons, more than I can say on this call. It's very personal. Only 2% of family-owned businesses go to the next generation. And for those of you who have not been doing the math, a generation is 25 years. After 25 years, it's another generation. So let's add this and that first note up there. If I said that only 10% of startups today, of anything you start today, will go past 10 years. And then of the 10%, only 2% will go past 25 years. Can you see how we don't have a future as a continent? This, by the way, is the reason why Verindo exists. It's literally our North Star. We're trying to contribute our quota to change that narrative. Hopefully in my lifetime, hopefully in my kids' lifetime, but I'm sure as hell going to make a dent. And that is why all of you are on this call. It's in line with that vision. Can we change that number? Because if only 2% of 10% get past 25 years, we don't have a future as a continent. This is why I personally am not intrigued. I respect all the hustlers out there. I respect all the employers. I respect all the startups that are doing big things right now. raising hundreds of millions. I respect them. I admire their tenacity. I learn from the execution. But I always have a caveat in my head. It's not as impressive how fast you're growing. What is impressive is if we all come back here 50 years from now, 100 years from now, will your company still be standing? The data tells me very likely no. That's a problem for me. And so my vision and my prayer is that most of you on this call, just by experiencing things like this, will be the launch of a different kind of thinking. And you can go on to learn even bigger and better things to add to what you're learning here, with the goal of, I must start a thing, for those of you that are going to be entrepreneurs, that will go past 10 years and I will hand over to my children. Because that is the only way we build a continent. 85% of all AI startups will be out of business in 3 years. Ironic, right? I thought AI was the boss. It's connected to the first sticky note. AI has just created a business opportunity, but it's the same problem. So how is it that we're saying that people are leveraging on tech, people that are leveraging on tech that literally thinks like a human being will still go out of business just like that 90% up there? Because there's more to it than the technology. And that's one of the things you're going to learn in this bootcamp. It's not tech first. It's begin with pain, end with pain. The tech, I have a cousin, he's on this call. He knows. He knows that my expertise is starting the pain, is understanding the pain, putting it on the whiteboard and flogging everybody to follow the pain. To write the code, please. That's why he's here. Just write the code. Write the code and we'll figure it out, right? Begin with pain, end with pain. But you don't do that, you're going to fail. Next slide. So what are we seeing? Organized complexity. What are we seeing globally? I love this slide because there are a number of you here that are applying to Microsoft, Facebook, your dream companies. Newsflash, over the last 2 years, your dream companies are firing people like water. We're talking 20,000 layoffs, 10,000 layoffs, 5,000. What is happening post-COVID? Why is Meta, I think Meta, it was what, almost 7,000 people retrenched? Why are they retrenching so much? These trends that we're talking about, there's been major disruptions in the job market because of the economic instability. So this is a very challenging environment for individuals and for organizations. COVID means limited resources. Some of you guys are trying to get into jobs. The jobs they're trying to get into are getting people out. Right? Some of you are trying to start businesses, and I hope one day I'm going to be like Microsoft. Yeah, newsflash. Microsoft is trying to be like Microsoft of before, right? So what is happening? What is happening? I know somebody who was affected with the layoffs at Meta, personally. It's not fun. It's not fun. And if that person was on this call, they'll say, please listen to what Oluchi is saying, right? The grass is not as green. Now you can, there's one company that's not here, which has been in the news the whole time, Twitter, now X, right? We know that a certain individual walked in with a sink, was like, let that sink in. Few weeks later, he had fired 85% of all staff in Twitter, which was thousands of people. I'm using his as an example to give you a snapshot of what's going on. There are no resources anymore, resources to spend like we used to spend before. And so there was something that Elon Musk did while he was laying off people. And for those of you who've heard me give this presentation 1,000 times, please bear with me. You probably roll your eyes, Oluchi, get to the juicy part. Bear with me. It's necessary to set the stage. There were thousands of people that were laid off. However, in the middle of the retrenching, there was a tweet from Elon Musk that intrigued me because it validates what I'm telling you now. He said, the same guy that was laying off people, he said, are you a developer? Have you ever built an app, done the back end of the app, done the front end of the app, created the marketing plan for the app, pushed that app into the market and sold it to 10, 100 people, and then scaled it across other regions. If you've done these things, please send me a DM. I want to hire you. That's the summary of what is happening. What I'm saying is, as people are getting retrenched, some people are getting hired. What's the DNA of people that are getting hired? Stay tuned in this bootcamp, and by the end of it, you will understand. There is a DNA right now that is in high demand. Next slide. We will talk about that in a minute. Fubara says multi-skilled. You're right in the ballpark. Let's come down to Africa. It's not only in big tech, in Silicon Valley. Look at it. My Kenyans in the house. Tech companies this year alone laid off 200,000+ people in Kenya. We all know that this was the worst year in the last 5 years for VC funding into the continent. Fun fact, there was a stat that we used to love to quote, right, Jonah? 3 years ago, right? We'll say African startups raised $1 million every hour. Beat that, right? This year, nobody can say it. Ain't no money like that. And so a lot of companies have retrenched. The 10 biggest tech companies have laid off people since 2020 in Africa. Look at the left right there. TikTok cuts jobs in Africa as part of global layoffs. What is happening? Just 48 hours ago, I think Nigerians saw on Nigerian Twitter that Netflix is leaving Nigeria and laying off jobs. What is happening? So this isn't just a big tech thing, and it isn't just Silicon Valley. It's happening right in our backyard. So we need to wake up, especially for those of us trying to enter the job market. You need a different set of skills and a different approach. Fact. Next. So next slide, please. Where this lands us is at a place where, oh, okay, that's another example. Oh, okay, I thought you had the previous example. But it's at a place where the key takeaway is that, yeah. Oh, okay, this is important, because the previous examples, I'm just talking about layoffs and stuff. And I think it was Ethiopia, right, Jonah, when I was teaching this to a bunch of very bright young ladies in Ethiopia earlier in the year, I know I paused there and I asked a question. And just as I expected, like, why are these companies retrenching? And someone said that maybe it's money. They don't have money, or they've lost money. And that's why I put this extra slide to show you. Look at that top slide there. After raising $70 million, this Nigerian startup shut down in 2023. Money was definitely not their problem. I don't know. What can you do with $70 million? If I just said, take for fun. Right? What can you do with that? $70 million. Somebody's still shutting down, right? Investors right now are not as bullish on Africa anymore because there is a bigger problem. Money is not the problem. There's a bigger problem. There's a reason why 92% are failing, and it is not about just funding. It eventually becomes a cash flow problem, right? But it's not about not having money initially to run. There's the one about the top left there. There was an interesting ride-hailing startup called Go My Way that was in Nigeria many years ago, when Uber was coming in. And it was very interesting. They failed within their first few years. They had a very, very, thank you, Fubara, government regulations, a number of things, right? Go My Way had a very interesting model, and they had copied an European startup that was running a model where you could actually book a cab. Let's say that, so for Ethiopians in the house, I want to go from I don't know, I want to go from Addis to Bishoftu, right? Instead of booking a ride, the ride app, I would go my way and I would check other people going to Bishoftu and hitch a ride with them. Right? So there's always a driver going to Bishoftu, and maybe 4 other people want to go to Bishoftu. So we all hitch a ride together on the app and we split the fare. Very interesting model. And that model has been scaling in Europe. You can literally take a cab. I forget the name of the company. You can go from Paris to Amsterdam with complete strangers, and you guys just have an amazing time or a nice road trip. That app failed years ago in Nigeria. And when they did a post-mortem, guess what they found out? Africans have trust issues. I don't want to get into a cab with people I don't know. They could be kidnappers or ritual killers or something. Like, why the heck would I do that? Why do I do that? Even my Uber driver, I take a picture of the plate number before I get in, even though I know he's in the app. Like, why would you ask me to get in an app with random people? Like, you see how common sense that is? A bunch of guys took time, raised money, built an app, spent marketing that, and did a whole lot of things, right? On an idea that didn't fit the culture. I love to use that example to say, guys, organize complexity, right? Understand the context you're innovating in, or you'd end up like Go My Way. Brilliant idea, comparable solution from the West, dead on arrival. Context. Thank you, Ahmed. Next slide. So where does this leave us? Because I've touched on context, I've touched on a number of things. It's not money, it's not this. The bottom line is there's organized complexity. And so clearly the change of pace is accelerating. Workers and employers alike, entrepreneurs as well, must be prepared to be able to quickly, emphasis on quickly, identify, create, manage, and scale value. 4 things. You need to be able to identify value, create the value, manage it when you've created it, and then scale it up to more people after you've succeeded. That thing I just said is no longer an option. It is now where we are. And those are the people that are getting the jobs. Those are the people that are building the solutions that are changing lives on our continent today. People that can do these 4 things fast, rinse and repeat. And this is what our entire bootcamp is designed around, to get you to a place where you are an identifier of value, creator of value, manager of it, and you can scale it. There has to be a better way of doing this, and we're here to show you that. But first, here's why that's important. Because I know that there are academics in the room. If I do not show you data and I do not show you a graph, they will not believe me. They would say Oluchi cooked this up in his room while he was eating a lot of chicken. So, next slide. Don't believe me, look at the headlines. Something is happening in the job market globally. If you just pay attention to the headlines, you will see that there's been a change. Look at it. What I like to call the rise of the generalist. And to the person who said multi-skilled, absolutely spot on. The rise of the generalist. Look at that Forbes headline that says, "Move over specialists. The rise of the generalist is here." I honestly believe that post 2020, like I told you, the factors, this is the decade of the generalist. This is not the decade of the specialist anymore. And I will explain why in the next slide. This is the decade of the generalist. I kind of saw this. I'm grateful to God for putting me in the right place at the right time. But I caught a glimpse of this 14 years ago, 2010, when I was just about to bag my degree in mechatronics engineering from the University of Nottingham. Yep, I was playing with robots, AI, that kind of thing. Look at me today. And I could see that one, didn't have a future in that, was looking for, oh, where am I going to get my future? And I literally went online and typed my first loves, engineering plus innovation plus, right? Leadership. And what did I see? master's in engineering, entrepreneurship, and innovation. I'm like, what the heck is that? And they're like, are you an innovator? Da, 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 da. Do you love to solve complex problems? The world is changing. Basically, everything you're seeing on your screen. And I was just nodding like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I spent that whole decade not understanding what the heck I was doing. And more importantly, nobody understood what I was doing. Like, it was really that bad. I had a mother who, up until 2020, I kid you not, for 10 years, will call me and say, Engineer Oluchi. And I'm like, Mommy, I stopped being an engineer 10 years ago. She's like, I don't know about that. I sent you to school to study engineering. I don't know what you're doing. 1 minute, 1 minute you're in fintech, agri-tech, whatever, rec. Like, by 2017, I stopped counting at 47 sectors that I had done projects in. And so I'm trying to explain this to my mom, but she's like, right? By 2020, these days when she calls me, she says, innovator, entrepreneur. Yeah, I'm like, that's the one. And she only did that because I ended up getting a master's in the bloody thing after 10 years. And so my mother's like, now that you have a master's in this thing, I can respect you. Before, I don't know what the heck you were doing. Typical African parents. Yep, if that resonates with you, they're all in the same WhatsApp group. But my point is, just at the nick of time, what we're seeing now, ever since 2020, just look at the job descriptions. Look at the headlines here first. And if you don't believe me, those jobs you're applying for, take a closer look at them again, and you will see what I'm saying. Look at for those of you in marketing, digital marketing or traditional, whatever it is, go look at those marketing positions you're looking out for. You're going to see, in those days, it was ability to tell a brand story and, manage social media pages and full stop. Now it is ability to manage social media pages, ability to sell, ability to do data analysis, to see the insights of what you're doing, ability to manage a budget, P&L, ability to do financial model, to understand the projection of the product in the market in the next 5 years. Like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for somebody that studied marketing or somebody that studied communication? Or are you looking for somebody that studied marketing with a twist of data analysis? These days, they add AI, ability to use AI tools for, for effective comms and marketing campaigns. Please. Like, if you look at those job descriptions again, what you're seeing is kind of like what Elon Musk was saying. I'm actually not interested in, oh, I'm a developer, I only used to develop. It's like, look, there's pain out there in the world. Did you build a thing? Did you raise funding for it? Did you put it in the hands of people? Did real human beings use it, even if it's 10 people? It gave them value and they paid you back for it. I want to hire you. This is the decade of the generalist. We're seeing this a lot more now. Beyond the job descriptions, for those of us that have had privilege of doing work with multinationals and stuff, we're seeing this everywhere. And so the submission, therefore, is that we have to approach things differently. We absolutely do. Don't take my word for this. Go do your own research and see what I'm saying. Guys, if it's okay with you, I see that there's 7 minutes on the clock. If it's okay with you, we're going to shoot for about maximum 15 minutes afterwards. Okay? Because we need to hit the nail on the head. Like I told you, today is not any deep stuff. Oh, that comes tomorrow. Right? Today is just mindset calibration. Like, why is all of this way? Why did we give you disciplined entrepreneurship first? Why are you going to experience what you're experiencing now? It's because yes, quite literally, we are trying to get you to a place where you guys are quite literally super soldiers. So think of a Swiss Army knife, right? The Swiss Army knife is whatever you need it to be when it needs to be. What exactly is it? Is it a can opener when you need it to be? Is it a screwdriver when you need it to be? Is it, I don't know, a hammer? Okay, I've never seen a Swiss Army knife with a hammer. If you've seen one, please let me know. But my point, you get my point. Like, There's many things in that toolbox. That's who you need to be today to not only get that opportunity that you're looking for, but to also keep it and thrive in it. For those of you that are going to be corporate innovators, and for those of you that are going to be entrepreneurs, that's what you need to be to really navigate the market constraints. Anything short of this, you're playing catch up. This is the decade that truly rewards the generalist. All right? All the stats are on your screen. Look at it. 50% of employees saying that the organization favors employees with a broad range of skills across multiple disciplines. 59% of employees saying their organization employs more generalists and specialists. 63% of employees saying that the organization hired more generalists and specialists in the past year. Just go online and Google it. Don't take my word for it. All right. The next slide, again, for the academics, I've given you data. Now I give you a graph because everybody likes a graph, right? I've been asked to trademark this graph, but I'm like, no, please take it, screenshot it, reproduce it, tweak it, right? Improve it. I'd love to know your thoughts on this. But the easiest way I can explain everything I said from the beginning, organized complexity, resources are going down, generalists identify value, all of that stuff, is to put it in a graph. When you can't understand what you're saying, just draw X and Y axis. It makes the world clear. The X axis, the horizontal axis here, let us call it value delivery. The Y axis, let us call it resources. The gist of all the plenty English I have been speaking is that what we are seeing today is that as resources are going down, which we know, right, post-COVID, there's less resources, right? There's less money, less time, less everything. So as resources are going down, the need for professionals that can identify value, create value, manage value, and scale value is going up in the opposite direction. It's that simple. The end of my graph, right? As resources go down, the need for professionals that can identify, create, manage, and scale value goes up. This is common sense, right? And now when you think about it, think about that your boss that you're working with, your uncle, your dad, your friend who's running a business. What do they always say? Yo, I don't have much money anymore to hire 100 people. I'd rather hire 10 people that can do the work of 100 people. Yes or no? That's literally the general the general vibe over the last couple of years. I don't have in my wife is in supply chain, and the very first thing her boss told her was, I know you went and got a master's in logistics and supply chain, but I need you to open your mind and be a generalist in this house space. Because listen, she shows up where there's disaster and war. I tell her all the time, after Jesus, I am a Christian. After Jesus, she's my hero, right? Because she's the real MVP. She goes wherever there's war or disaster. She's like, please, 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 can I go? Can I go? It's so much fun. I'm like, I don't understand you. But she goes. And what her boss was saying was, listen, we don't have resources anymore. When there's an earthquake and stuff, I'm not going to send a team of a program person, a logistics person, a public health person, or whatever. I ain't got that budget. I want to send one person who will go in there, size up the problem, identify, create makeshift solutions, makeshift tents, stop the bleeding, manage that whole thing, let me know what's needed, all the specialists I need to send. Then the person leaves to the next spot. That's one of the best advice that she got years ago. If it's happening, it's all the largest organizations, it's happening in your father's company, it's happening in your friend's SME, it's the same problem. Now just imagine as an entrepreneur, you had these skills. This graph, I hope you keep it in your mind and always remember it as we move on this journey and as it becomes painful. Resources have reduced globally. Professionals have to get better at identifying, managing, and scaling value. There is a higher demand for you guys. Our resources are going to keep reducing. Fun fact, from next year, resources are going to keep reducing. Department of Government Efficiency in the US, being run by Elon Musk, have already said that from January 20th till January 20th, 2026, exactly 2 years, they're going to cut almost $20 trillion of US spending and balance the US budget. Fun fact, that affects all of us on this call, by the way, because the US is the biggest funder of everything, right? Your African Development Bank, the United States, is the second largest donor of the AFDB. Every United Nations agency, the largest, your USAID, all of the things that are giving you funding today will be second priority. Resources are reducing even more from next year. So this is not an option for us anymore. Next slide. The summary of what I've been trying to say, and I'm almost at the end. Jonah, next slide, is that you know how they say, jack of all trades, master of none? I've spent a decade and a half on this journey, and I can confidently say this is my decade. I don't know about y'all, but in this decade, I'm telling everybody, in today's world, jack of all trades can be the master of some. Jack of all trades can be a person that can quickly identify, create, manage, and scale value. A jack of all trades is an innovator. That's it. That's it, right? That's what we're saying. So anyone who tells you, oh, man, yeah, you're a jack of all trades, like, you're so last century or you're so last 20 years. Right now, Elon Musk wants me. So I will do my jack of all trades stuff, right? The only issue is I just got to be great at quickly going through the process, at quickly starting with what you're paying. And the next time I'm coming back to you, I'm solving your pain. Don't ask me how I did it. If I needed to wear different hats along the way, that's my problem. But judge me based on whether I solved your problem or not. That is the conversation I have with clients, I have with my team, I have with my mentors. Did I solve your pain? If I solved your pain, pay me my money. Don't ask me, did I write the code? Did I build the dashboard? Did I do the marketing? Don't ask me that. Did I solve your pain? Did I understand your pain, first of all, and did I solve it? That's it. We begin with pain, we end with pain. When we are innovators, and the world needs us now more than ever. Do I have a next slide? And finally, where does this land? Saying that if you know me, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. All innovators are entrepreneurs, but not all entrepreneurs are innovators. By virtue of all the English I've been speaking, right? All innovators are entrepreneurs, and not all entrepreneurs are innovators. Here's why. And some of my people are going to roll their eyes. They're like, we know what's coming. We're going to expand a bit more on this in that next session tomorrow. But you know how I said we begin with pain and end with pain? Here's what I mean practically. Juliana, if you have a headache, you have pain in your head. What I am saying is that innovation is not what a lot of people think it is, i.e. creativity. I review CVs all the time and I see I am an innovative person. No, you're not. You're a creative person. Creativity and innovation are not the same. Or I see I'm an out-of-the-box thinker. That's not innovation. You're just an out-of-the-box thinker. Creativity only becomes an innovation when I have given Juliana something that takes her headache away. Until that pain is relieved, it is just a bright idea. It is just a creative idea. It is not innovation. So when we say the science of innovation, what we're actually saying is the science of relieving pain. Who else does that? Doctors, right? Do you ever go to a doctor that you have headache and they tell you, yeah, you know, take this for your liver? I'm like, yo, dude, I have headache. Yeah, take this for your liver. And then 5 days later, you still have headache. Will you go to that doctor again? No. You judge a doctor by their ability to eradicate, not reduce, but eliminate your pain. We need to become doctors in the business world. That's what we're training you to be. You don't identify pain and then touch it a little bit. You eliminate it. That's us. So the minute you can do that, you are an innovator. Okay? So principle number 1, if you have pain and I give you a pill that takes away your pain, I have given you value. Therefore, principle number one means that the inverse of pain is value. It's that simple. So when I said ability to identify value, what I meant was ability to identify pain, because the inverse of pain is value. Whenever I ask in interviews, people say, I'm a person of value. I can give you value. So I don't need you to tell me. I just need to pick up my phone and call your previous boss and say, hey, in the last 90 days, what was the pain that she saw for you? If he's stammering, you are not a person of value. It's that simple. Right? It's that simple. So principle number one, the inverse of value is pain. If Juliana has a headache and I give her a pill, I've given her value. Principle number two, when I give value, don't worry, Jonah, just previous slide. When I give value, previous slide, stay on the previous slide. When I give you value, you will give me value back. That's principle number two. You might want to write these principles down. There are three of them. Number one, the inverse of pain is value. We're going to repeat this a lot throughout all of our bootcamps. The inverse of pain is value. You want to know how to give value, look for pain, right? Number two, when you truly give value, you get value back. What do I mean? Juliana, if I eliminate your headache, what are you going to say? Oh my gosh, Oluchi, thank you so much. I don't have money, but are you single? Come and marry my younger sister. You automatically want to give me value back. What that means is that as innovators, we don't chase money, because money is just an exchange of value. If I truly solve your headache, you will naturally give me money back. Or if you don't have money, you give me kind. Right? So as an innovator, look for pain, solve the pain, and watch the money or the kind come to you. See what I mean by all innovators? We end up being an entrepreneur. You didn't set out to be one, but you end up being one because you start with pain, you give value to it. So principle number two, you get value back. If you truly deliver value, you get value back. Principle number three is the deeper the pain, the more the perception of value. What does this mean? If Juliana, if Jonah, and if Peace all had headache, and Jonah had the headache for the last 2 hours, Peace had it for 2 days, Juliana had it for 9 months. If I come and give them the same pill and it takes away their headache, who do you think will be most grateful to me? Is it Jonah that had it for 2 hours, or Peace that had it for 2 days, or Juliana that had it for 9 months? Obviously, Juliana. Jonah appreciates it, but not as much. Simple principle. The deeper the pain, the more the perception of value. So who do you think will pay me the most money? Jonah will probably give me $2. Juliana will give me her entire life savings because I've just eradicated the 9 months worth of pain. That's principle number three. The deeper the pain, the more the perception of value. So as innovators, we not only have the skills to identify pain and then deliver value and get value back, we also have the skills to look for the deepest pain, because that's where the deepest value delivery is. And that's where we get the most value back. It's very simple. That's what we're teaching you in this bootcamp. This particular first bootcamp is all about problem identification. What we mean is identifying pain and having the skills to look for the deepest pain in the room and go after that. Not all pain are equal, right? That's pretty much what you're doing here. And so, final slide, Jonah. So at the end of the day, innovators, because the last time I taught this, I know there was some need for definition. Innovation, the ability to solve problems in a way that delivers maximum value, right? Inverse of value is pain, so deepest pain, right? With minimal resources. That's what I said at the earlier time. Frugal innovation, maximum value, solve the deepest pain with the minimal resources. Entrepreneurship, the ability to create and manage a business that solves a problem and delivers value to people. Very different. Innovation is the actual solving of the pain. Entrepreneurship, the ability to create a business, to manage a legal entity. We are not talking about that. That's why I said we're going a step higher, which is innovation. When we get you there, anything you want to do it through your business or do it in somebody else's business. That's your problem, right? But let's elevate the conversation from the legal entity, how to register a business, how to do your branding, that's not what this workshop is about. This workshop is, can we all just go to paying? And let's talk about paying for the next few weeks and be masters at that. Then, if you want to go set up your business, there's so many courses out there that teach you how to do your branding, your marketing. That's not here. Makes sense. Entrepreneurship, the ability to identify and solve problems within an organization. So you see how, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're an intrapreneur, please be an innovator first. That is my life's mission. More Africans as innovators, and go do whatever you want to do, inside companies or with your own company. Okay? With that, I think that sets the context. Jonah, that's pretty much it.